Deb, I'm going to ask you one more question. A couple of days ago, you had a interaction with a very famous person that everyone here in Chicago knows. Tell us about your meeting with Joe Madden.
Well, I have to start with a little of the backstory. So I find myself at a stage of life where if any of you have been exposed to Bob Buford's idea about halftime, ladies and gentlemen, I am officially in my halftime. I just celebrated my 50th birthday, and I am amazed at just that simple milestone, how that really gives a person an opportunity to be very reflective about the things that matter. You begin to really reevaluate the order of what your story of your life is saying to the world about what matters, and then how quickly you can really lock in on the things that really match or are of value and importance, and how you can maybe dispense with a lot of the things that may be distractions or be offered out of a sense of obligation. And so one of the great mentors or teachers, I think you can be mentored by people, whether you know them personally, you can be mentored from afar. In fact, I remember years ago, I got to see Tony Dungy talk about how he was mentored from afar by Tom Landry. So he didn't necessarily have a relationship with Tom Landry, but he was really inspired by Tom Landry's faith and how he ran a football team, and how he spoke about how Tom Landry had a huge impact in mentoring him, even though they didn't have necessarily a true kind of classic mentoring relationship in that they knew each other, or that Tom Landry was speaking into him. So my version of the Tom Landry, not so much from a faith perspective, but certainly from a leadership perspective, is the managerial philosophy that Joe Madden has embodied in really being a key architect in what is now going to become, one of the greatest baseball dynasties, or one of the greatest baseball moments in the history of anybody who's going to be watching this video. We can all remember, whether from Chicago or not, and whether you're a Cubs fan or not, it's hard to ignore the impact of seeing something play out with such grace, such power, such leadership. And what I love about Madden is, number one, he does have some quotable management principles, right? Do simple better. Don't let the pressure exceed the pleasure, and many others that are t-shirt quip worthy. But some of the other things that I've always admired about him is how self-sacrificing he is in his management philosophy, and really creating conditions for players to play at the optimal game, and at the same time setting a very high bar that they respect the sport and that they don't take the little things for granted. And so as I've watched his philosophies and I've watched the transformation, he very quickly became a focal point, a mentor from afar that I often quote. I often summarize some of his interests and try to translate those into business. And I must say, it has definitely been very popular with my Chicago clients when we can sort of align on our shared affection and genuine love of the Cubs and of Madden. So as a part of my halftime and my 50th birthday, one of my coworkers who, prior to joining my company now, had a chance to do marketing and sales for the Tampa Bay Rays. And as many of you know, one of Madden's stops along his career was working at Tampa Bay. And so Dave, my colleague, knew of my great affection and great sense of affinity for Madden's teaching. So as a 50th birthday present, he managed to organize a meet and greet through a gentleman who runs Joe's Foundation. And so one of Joe's best friends who runs his foundation, Respect 90, is also a shared friend of my work colleague. And so unbeknownst to me, they architected this whole meet and greet opportunity earlier this week. Nice. And we had an opportunity to spend about a half hour in the dugout with Joe Madden before a game. And what I was really struck by was the man who you see in the media, the quips that he may say as a soundbite for an article or a TV spot, are absolutely consistent with who he was when I had a chance to meet him. And he seemed so genuinely moved that someone in the business world was using his principles in coaching and mentoring executives and leaders. He seemed so moved about it that our interaction resulted in him inviting me to email him some of the summaries of the Maddenisms that I track. He said, well, maybe you should just personally email those to me, of which I immediately thought, oh, sure, of course, I'll personally email that to you. Well, it turns out after I communicated with the head of his foundation that Joe had made that request, he goes, oh, no, he wants you to personally email him. So I'm pleased to report I have Joe Madden's personal email, and I have at least initiated one communication. So we'll see if this becomes something that is more ongoing than a single level of effort. But again, what a signal to the testimony of his leadership, his authenticity, his genuineness, and giving a person like myself that kind of access. So I think there's a lot of lessons that we could draw from this.
Deb, thank you. We're looking forward to seeing you here in September.
Thank you so
I
much,
appreciate
Tom.
that. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.